In our last episode, we discovered that the ruins of Huntersville were infested with supermutants. And after clearing the place, we learned that Huntersville is where supermutants came from. We discovered that the pre-war company West Tek infected the drinking water of the town of Huntersville with FEV, the forced evolutionary virus, the virus that turns people into supermutants. We know the how, but we don't know the why. Why would West Tek do this? Why would they infect an entire town and then kidnap or murder their people? To find out, we need to head to the West Tek research facility. We learned from the terminal entries at Huntersville that West Tek had recently moved into West Virginia. The residents expressed their shock that West Tek, such a huge American company, would create a research facility all the way out here in Appalachia. But of course, if they needed people to experiment on, the wilderness of Appalachia, far from major urban centers, suddenly becomes a very appealing choice. We find the West Tek research facility by taking Highway 107 north from Huntersville. And when we arrive, we find it also swarming with supermutants. After clearing the place, we can explore the exterior. We find the front entrance to West Tek fenced off, but there's a big gap in the fence. Someone fortified the place post-war, possibly raiders or the supermutants. We find junk walls and sandbag barricades all over. In one of the trailers guarded with bone chimes, we find a Nuka-Cola Quantum, and from the front parking lot, we get a great view of the West Tek sign. West Tek Research Center. The dangling nets and cages tell us that it was indeed raiders who had occupied this place before the supermutants moved in. Or could it be that those very same raiders became the supermutants we just killed? After all, this is the West Tek Research Facility, where we know they were experimenting with FEV. Will we find FEV just lying about inside? After looting a yellow wooden crate by some raider cages and an explosives crate by a junk fence near the door, we can continue exploring the exterior by heading around back. We'll head through the main door in just a minute. On the side of the building, we find scaffolding that leads to the roof. But when we reach the rear of the building, we find more supermutants. Behind the building, we find our ruined brick structure. Inside, we found a fusion generator, but the core had been removed in my game. We find boxes and crates, industrial equipment and tanks, and a blue metal double door leading into the building. So we have two entrances here. Scaling the scaffolding leads to a floating pod at the side of the building. Here we find a cooler by a desk. This leads to a platform where we can loot a weapon and some ammunition. And next to this we find a locked tool case. Then continuing up, we reach the roof. There's plenty of scrap up here, but not much else. Few enemies and no doors. Parts of it may look inaccessible, but with careful jumping, we can access almost all of it. And we do find a few interesting scenes. We find the abandoned camp of an artist. There's a cooler, a ruined tent, a bubblegum teddy bear, a can of paint, and a piece of art. It presumably belongs to the skeleton lying in the nearby chair who must be the artist. I guess she came up here with her bicycle to find inspiration for her painting. We can take advantage of the nearby cooking stove to cook up all our super mutant hound meat. If we leap over a wall to another nearby section, we find more of her artwork. Dozens of cans of paint, paintbrushes, and a number of canvases, all with unique paintings. Climbing to one of the higher points, we find the artist's perch. She had a lawn chair up here with a ham radio, some binoculars, her paint cans, and a canvas. But most excitingly, here we find a perfectly preserved pie. My first in Fallout 76. And we didn't have to resort to luck to get it. While exploring the roof, we hear supermutants return to the front parking lot.
I can hear you!
With the exterior fully explored, we can finally enter the facility through the large front door. On the other side of the door, we immediately find super mutants, and they had been fighting something. We also begin the miscellaneous quest, Learn the Secrets of West Tek. We can take care of the stragglers we find here. With the lobby clear, we can take in our surroundings. We see a bank of windows to the west and then 2 doors leading out, one to the north and one to the east. Between these 2 doors was reception, where we find the front desk terminal. Moving to the eastern door, we see that this is a staircase leading up and down. Moving back to reception, we can explore the northern door, and we see that this bends around, snaking through the first floor. Looks like this is the one we want to take. But first, to explore reception, we find a duffel bag on the floor next to an espresso machine, and it looks like these windows were display windows, showcasing West Tek technology. Before leaving, we can log into and read the front desk terminal. West Tek Research. We find 2 items. In the first, no tours. Another reminder, please be more vigilant of uninvited guests entering the lobby. We had an incident this morning where a random stranger entered the complex and approached the front desk. They looked and appeared like they were ready for an interview. Suit and tie, briefcase. They said they were here for a company tour. This person was not on the list of names for the day, and the security office was notified immediately. Remember, this building is a secure facility. We are prime targets for corporate espionage, sabotage, or investigative reporting. If you see something, say something. Sounds like West Tek was justifiably paranoid. Imagine if the press had caught wind of what they did to the people of Huntersville. Backing out, we can explore Intramail, and we only find one option. Subject, recruitment. To Richard Birch from Michelle Ginsby. Look, Dick, I know you think it's funny throwing these BS degree kids my way, but I'm sick of it. The best candidate we've had in months was Ella Ames, who, as I'm sure you remember, rejected us. No thanks to you and your half-ass outreach. I'm giving you one last chance to prove you're good at your job. Her father will be lucky if he sees the end of the month. Once he's gone, you need to be there to point her in the right direction. You've got her address, but from what I'm hearing, she's also joined up with those Free States fanatics. If she's not at home, she's got a bunker somewhere, so find that location. We need her. Once she's here, then we can talk promotion. Michelle. This story provides us with some needed background to better understand Ella Ames, a character we met during the primary plot of the game. Ella Ames was a member of the Free States. We found her bunker in the mire, and by completing the quest we found on her terminal entries, we were able to develop the Chem Rad Shield, a superior form of radiation resistance. This entry explains why a Free State fanatic living in a bunker after the war was able to produce such a powerful chem. She was a scientist so well respected that even West Tek wanted her. But notice how insidious West Tek's recruiting policies are. They knew her father was terminally ill. They knew he was gonna die soon, and they knew that she relied upon him for life and career advice. They're internally conspiring to wait until her father dies, at a moment when she's emotionally vulnerable, so they can sweep in and recruit her to work at West Tek. That's sick. After looting a toolbox we found on the rubble of the lobby, we can head through the northern door. We see a window to the right and lab equipment in there. Continuing west, we find 2 doors, one to the north and one to the west. The one to the west is partially blocked with a curtain. We see it's a locker room leading to another door to the north. The room to the north is that lab we saw in the window. Moving in here first, we see some Protectrons still in their Protectron charging docks. And here we find our second terminal, the security terminal, locked with a skill level 1 lock. After hacking it, we find quite a number of options. In the first one, requests approved to the security office from West Tek message delivery system. Subject, requests approved. Hello, this is an automated message from West Tek. Your recent request has been approved. Have a nice day. We then get to read the original message to the West Tek ticket system from security office. Subject, request security protection upgrades. New request for at least 3 security protectrons for added safety and secure coverage of facility. Our staff currently does not have enough time to man the decontamination arches and patrol the facility and exterior grounds. Pods can be placed in the security office. Existing maintenance crews will be sufficient for this request. Well, it sounds like West Tek listened, and of course they would. If their security team needs more Protectrons, and West Tek wants to keep its secrets, of course, they'll give the security team exactly what they want, which is why I think we find 3 Protectron charging docks, 2 of which are still full, in this room. Next, we can access safe control. To unlock a nearby safe, we can control the decontamination archway. It's inactive at the moment, but we can activate it. Free rad removal, I'll take it. And finally, we can access Protectron control. And from here, we can activate the nearby Protectrons.
Powering up, Protectron, on duty.
Wish I would have done this before clearing the super mutants. The safe we unlocked is on the floor right next to the desk, and nearby we find an ammo canister. Out of this room, we can head back to the hallway and turn right to the locker room with the curtain. We see the archway still spewing decontamination. We can loot the lockers. We find military fatigues and a helmet here, as well as a damaged hazmat suit. There's a doctor's bag and a first aid kit, and when done, we can walk through the arches. But I wasn't irradiated at this point, so it didn't really do me any good. On the other side of the arches is the research center proper. We arrive in a bit of a waiting room. There's a door to the northwest, a staircase to the east, but it's blocked in, and then a bathroom to the east. And it looks like from the bathroom we can access the blocked-in staircase. We'll come back here in a bit. Back into the waiting room, we can loot the Eatrotronic for food and the Nuka-Cola machine for Nuka-Cola. And it's then that we get rushed by a wave of super mutants. Yeesh. Was that every mutant in the facility? I hope so. Before moving on into the nearby room, we can admire the West Tek Research Center sign here. It has a charming Googie design, like the sign we found outside. When done, we can move north. This is the mainframe computer and cultivation room. To the east, we see a door with plants. We can loot a bunch of mute fruit and potatoes, great for our garden back at camp. Backing out, we see a staircase leading to the second floor. We'll head up in a minute, but exploring this floor in a clockwise fashion, we find some display windows and on the other side a bunch of carrots. And this is where you hit if you need some fresh crops. Next to this is another window with potatoes. And continuing around, we find a chemistry station on the other side of a banister, useful for scrapping up our gear. Continuing clockwise, we arrive on the northern side of this room, and here we find a rubble ramp leading to the second floor. We'll head up there in a minute. Continuing around, we find some razor grain growing in a window, and a door leading out of this room into another lab. This room is destroyed, lit only by sparks pouring from the ceiling. But following it around, we arrive on the eastern end of the large room, and here we find the greenhouse control terminal. Inside, 2 options. In the first, the Greenhouse Initiative. 2 greenhouse staff from West Tek. Subject, Greenhouse Initiative. Congratulations! Your team has been selected for a new pilot program, the Greenhouse Initiative, an extension of the Pan-Immunity Virion Project. This initiative dares to test the application of new mutations on edible plants and vegetation in a controlled environment. Your existing facilities will soon receive necessary upgrades for these brave new experiments. A classified memo containing full specifications and arrangements will be forthcoming. Forge ahead and light the way. Will you be the key to ending the plague of world hunger? Anything is possible at West Tek. We remember from reading the terminal entries at the Glow in Fallout 1 that the Pan-Immunity Virion Project, or PvP for short, was the original name of FEV, the Forced Evolutionary Virus. West Tek started the Pan-Immunity Virion Project in 2073 with the goal of finding a cure for the new plague and with protecting American citizens in case China attacked with biological weapons. It wasn't until 2076 that West Tek discovered that the Pan-Immunity Virion Project had potential military applications and then began working with the military on it, naming the militarized version FEV. But it looks like before PvP became FEV, the researchers at the Glow shared their research with the scientists here at the West Tek Research Facility in Appalachia. They had similar but different goals. On the West Coast, they were trying to cure the new plague and inoculize people from any biological weapons China might use on Americans. And here in Appalachia, they were trying to create beneficial plant mutations to solve world hunger. Noble goals. Let's find out exactly how they went bad. In the next one, Greenhouse Initiative to Greenhouse staff from Dr. Wilfred Dumont, PhD. Subject regarding Greenhouse Initiative. Hello, staff. I'm sure you've seen the announcement, but it's true. We are moving on. The greenhouse's original purpose was to facilitate and control the production of genetically modified foods in a safe, practical manner. This new initiative will be radically shifting away from that. I don't know the full details yet, but I believe it will be a manufactured mutagen of some kind. Access and transport of the mutagen is slow, with lots of red tape. It will be several months before we begin experiments in full swing. I'll be sending out tasks to clean out your greenhouses and prepare new control samples soon. If you have any questions, please come see me in my office or wait until the official memo hits your desk. A final note, this initiative does void most of your contracts. Please come see me to discuss your existing terms and any possible transfers. I am more than happy to address any concerns. Sincerely, Dr. Wilfred Dumont, PhD. This coincides well with the history of PvP that we know. Once West Tek discovered the military applications of PvP, they canceled the Pan-Immunity Virion project and focused solely on FEV, the militarized version. That's why these guys who were working on PvP are now out of jobs. But we already know that after canceling PvP, they must have engaged in FEV research, otherwise we wouldn't have found super mutants here. We need to dig deeper to find out exactly what happened next. With this first floor explored, we can use the stairs to reach the second level of this room. Again, moving in a clockwise fashion, we find that this floor is mostly ruined, but we still have access to a number of rooms. To the west, we find a ruined lab, which connects through a broken wall to a room to the north. Here we find back-to-back chemistry stations, which we can use to scrap our junk. There are some chems in our first aid kit, and then this room leads back to the walkway through a hole in the wall to the east. From here we find a room to the north. This is the room we could have reached using the rebel ramp we found below, and here we find a number of workstations. In the first cubicle to the northwest, we find our first holotape. The West Tek Research Wing access code. Fantastic, we've got a key. After looting the access code, we can read the nearby analysis terminal. Virology analysis. 4 entries, and the first one, FTS-3A, Detailed Water Quality Report. Data read error. Backing out, FTS-3A, Water Analysis. Oh, good. Water Analysis Report for Field Test Site 3A, Huntersville. The approved FEV strain has been introduced to the Huntersville water supply, while chlorine dioxide content has been reduced slightly to decrease its effectiveness at disinfecting the virus. No noticeable differences in water quality should be discernible by the population. We predict infection to be widespread among the test subjects, but due to the nature of this strain, the results may appear slower than the concentrated lab strain. I see. This explains why the people of Huntersville got slowly sick over days and weeks, instead of instantly transforming into supermutants. Long-term physical attributes of the test subjects should greatly exceed average human levels with none of the side effects of previous lab trials. Dr. Elias Khan. So, at the same time, the military and West Tek were experimenting on prisoners with FEV at Mariposa. West Tek, working with the military, were likewise experimenting on civilians in Huntersville with FEV. God, I imagine what Roger Maxson would have done if he found out about this. In the next one, formula adjustment. After the incident involving an unauthorized desertion from FTS-3A, there is a desire coming from way up that we come up with a solution that obviates the need to terminate valuable test subjects. The proposed solution is to introduce a pheromonic component to mark gestating hosts. This way, if one gets loose again, we can use the hounds to track them down instead of the alternative. Okay, and to put that into English, after one of our test subjects from Huntersville escaped, the guys in charge wanted us to figure out a way to capture these subjects without killing them. Our best solution is to alter FEV so that infected people secrete pheromones that our dogs can pick up so we can track them down. There is no shred of humanity in this entry. They don't even see the townsfolk of Huntersville as people. But this clue can help explain why we almost always find supermutants, at least north of DC, with supermutant towns. This strain, and presumably the one the Institute worked on in Boston, causes supermutants to excrete pheromones that attract dogs. The supermutants then take the dogs and dip them in FEV, turning them into hounds. A nifty little explanation. And in the last one, change of course, the powers that be have decided that termination is the only viable solution to unauthorized desertation of test subjects. It has been determined that adding the pheromonic component to the formula has the unfortunate side effect of producing a powerful and rather distinct scent that may draw curiosity to the site, which is in direct contradiction to the intended effect of the quarantine. The task has been placed on hold, but will likely be assigned to another department for future experimentation. So after all of that, the pheromone idea failed. I wonder exactly what kind of scent it produced, especially if it was powerful enough to draw attention to Huntersville. I wonder how far away you had to be to smell the people of Huntersville. It's a disturbing thought. And even though they canceled the pheromone idea here, they did end this entry by saying that they handed the research off to another team, and they were likely going to include it with FEV in future experiments. So I believe this still provides an adequate explanation for why we always find super mutant hounds with super mutants. Exploring the offices, we find a cap stash in a nearby cubicle, and then the cubicle room opens back out to the walkway to the south. Continuing clockwise, the walkway turns a corner to the north and ends at an open door. We can loot a tool case on a table, and a shelf above it. There's an ammo crate and boxes of ammo between two couches and a lamp, and then heading through the door, we find a staircase that brings us up to a control room. We see windows overlooking some sort of lab to the southeast. Our miscellaneous quest marker points us to a nearby terminal here. Peering out the window, we find vats and more mutants. After clearing the mutants, and before reading the terminal we can sweep the room, we find a few weapons and containers, and on one of the nearby cabinets, another holotape. And this is another copy of the West Tek Research Wing access code. So it's a copy of the same holotape we looted previously. When done, we can move east to read the control room terminal. Control room, Technician Carl Worth. Technician's log, July 16th, 2077. Not much to report today. The FEV tanks are starting to spring some leaks where the feeder lines are connected, but it shouldn't take more than a day or two to swap out the O-rings. It's messy work, but luckily Spielman drew the short straw, and he'll have to stand ankle deep in the sludge until we can properly get it cleaned up. This FEV is volatile stuff. It degraded the vulcanized rubber on those seals like it was acid. Strangely, there's no acidic content to it at all. It must have affected the O-rings on a molecular level. Kinda makes me wonder if it's safe having it pooling up on the floor. Gee, I wonder. Is a chemical that can alter the molecular structure of rubber safe to have pooling on the floor? I'm sure it's fine. In the next one, August 2nd, 2077, Chadwell fell into one of the tanks today. Poor bastard. He was wearing full biohazard gear, but he was most certainly dead when they pulled him out. The suit must have gotten breached on the way in or something, because he never even came up for air or called for help. They didn't even know he had fallen in until they drained the tank. Man, that twisted look on Chadwell's face. Oh, it's giving me the creeps just thinking about it. Thank God West Tek's giving us that hazard pay bonus, otherwise I'd be out of here. Sure, as long as you're getting the hazard pay, I'm sure he can still have fun spending all that money when he's dead. In the next one, October 23rd, 2077, the day the bombs dropped. Holy crap, everything's gone to hell. I can't believe those idiots actually did it. They blew up the goddamn world. Luckily, we were inside the facility when the bombs hit. Supervisor Bardwell begged us to stay with the FEV tanks until he checked in with the top brass, but all the communication lines are down. Spielman and I are thinking of bolting, but I guess we'll give Blackwell a day to figure out what to do. It's not like I have a home to go back to anyway. And in the final one, October 30th, 2077, Bardwell decided to head out to make contact with the U.S. Army in Huntersville, but that was 6 days ago, and he hasn't come back yet. He told us if everything went south to dump the neutralizing agent into the FEV tanks. Spielman and I followed orders and made sure that the job was done. Before we abandoned West Tek, we confirmed that the liquid in the tanks was neutralized. Still highly toxic, but at least the FEV was gone. Well, that's it for us. I'm gonna stick with Spielman for a while, and hopefully we can make it somewhere safe, wherever that might be. Wait a minute, they developed an FEV neutralizing agent? And they neutralized FEV in the tanks before leaving? But since we still find super mutants here, this must mean that they never neutralized the infected water at Huntersville. Which, of course, explains why Huntersville is still today the source of the super mutant infestation. Even after the responders and the Brotherhood wiped them completely out at Huntersville, they still came back because the water is still infected. The last option is to remotely open a nearby door. Backing out, we can peer out the window to see the door we just opened. Now to find a way down there. Heading out of the control room, we can go down the stairs and then jump from this balcony to the ground floor of the cultivation room. From here, we can continue east until we find a double door leading to a utility room. But you know, there was one thing we missed. Heading all the way back to the waiting room just on the other side of the decontamination arches, we can head into that bathroom, which we never fully explored. Here we find chems in the mirrors above the sinks, and opening one of the stalls, we find the skeleton of a woman with mentats on the floor beside her. This opens up through a door that puts us out on the other side of the barricade, blocking this hallway. This leads us to what the strategy guide calls the Cone Vat Junction Room. From here we can find a way to get to the vats. There is minor scrap here, and we find two doors. One to the south, leading to a staircase up. The southern door leads to the bottom of the stairwell we saw from the lobby upon first entering. We're trying to get to the vats room, so we'll go through the northern door. This brings us to the bottom level of the vats chamber that we saw from the window of the control room. This is the room that had the door that we opened from the control room terminal. On this ground level of the vats room, we find a tinkerer's workbench, which we can use to scrap on up, at the base of which we also find a randomized plan. In my case, I found some lion statues. To the southwestern corner, we find a short staircase leading to a sealed-off room. We must have unlocked this gate from the control room. Here we find a big double door leading to another section. We'll come back here in a minute. Back down to the lower floor of the vats. We can take a ramp up to the main catwalk to finish exploring the vat room. In the southwestern corner, we find the skeleton of a U.S. serviceman. Even more evidence that West Tek here was working in conjunction with the military, just like the West Tek on the West Coast. I hopped in the vats to see what would happen, but the footage I took got corrupted. You don't turn into a super mutant because, as we read, the FEV was neutralized, but we get high doses of radiation really quickly. I died the first time I tried to explore the vats. But there are goodies in each of them. In one, there's a super mutant gore bag. In another, there's a gore bag and a mini nuke. And in the final one, there's a skeleton clutching a fat man next to a footlocker that contained over 30 caps and some tattered rags. Back out on the catwalk before we jumped in, we find a T-junction. We can go west towards a door or continue exploring to the east. Going west first leads us to a utility room. We can take the catwalk and ramp all the way to the ground floor, loot the containers along the way, until we find a door that leads back to the cultivation room, where they did the greenhouse experiments. So we've connected the dots. We now know where this doorway leads. Anyway, retracing our steps back to the vats room, we can continue exploring east. At the end of the catwalk, we find a table, upon which is a vial of toxic goo. The toxic goo won't turn us into super mutants, and it's not used in any crafting recipe, but because it's so highly radioactive, it could be used to farm for mutations. Or it can be useful for those who have the Radicool, Nerd Rage, and Mystery Meat perks. Turning left, we find a ramp leading back down to the bottom floor of the vats, and at the end, we find the double doors leading outside. These are the same blue metal double doors we saw at the rear of the exterior of the building. But turning right, we find the door that we opened from the control room. This is the dispensary. And inside, we find a cooler on a console. There's supposed to be a bobblehead here too, but someone had looted it in my game. And an end of dungeon steamer trunk. Next to a blasted out terminal, we find another copy of the Research Wing access code. That's 3 copies of the same code. 3 ways to gain the key. And we know exactly what this opens up. Moving south, we can head up the short steps and use the access code to open the Research Wing access terminal. This allows us to open the security door, which brings us to the Research Wing. And we find it infested. Well, we just fought every mutant in this wing, I think. At least now we have some peace and quiet. Let's head back downstairs to the door we used to come into the research wing to act as a point of reference, so we know exactly where we are. From here, we move south to find ourselves in a long hallway. There are rooms on both sides of the hallway. Turning right first, we arrive at the main specimen lab, reminiscent of the Institute's FEV lab. We even find super mutant corpses floating in tanks of FEV. Looking up, we see a room above us. We'll have to find a way there in a minute. Continuing to explore this room, we find a door out to the south. But before heading there, we can move to the northwest where we find a small room inside the main specimen lab. There is the corpse of a super mutant spread out on a table. And on a pushcart nearby, we find the holotape subject K117M interview.
Okay, K117M. In your own words, please describe how you feel.
I feel different. Like my mind is not my own.
Do you remember who you were?
Yes, I was, Billy Severs, a man living in.
You don't remember where you're from?
No, What's happening to me? Can you make me better?
I'm asking the questions, K117M. If you're patient, I'll help you, okay?
Yes, I understand.
Good. You're doing really well, K117M. Now, one more question. If we asked you to help us, would you do exactly as we command?
Yes, anything. I just want to go home. Home. Wife. Where's my wife?
Oh, God. She's fine, K117M. Calm down, please.
No! What have you done to my wife? Bring her to me now! I'll kill all of you!
Code Red in interrogation room B. I repeat, Code Red!
This interview question is telling. The scientist asked Billy if he would do exactly as he was told. They were not only trying to make a superhuman army, but a superhuman brainwashed army that they could control. But the problem with their experimentation at this moment was that they couldn't control these super mutants. But let's see if they ever succeeded. After looting more chems and 2 chem boxes in this room, we could go through the southern door, but by doing so we would miss a lot. So heading back to the hallway, we can explore the rooms on the opposite side of the hall. Before heading upstairs, we can head through the double doors into the Specimen Containment Lab. Here we find more super mutants floating in tanks, and the miscellaneous quest marker points us to the Specimen Containment Terminal. Warning, system offline, automatic containment release disabled. We find 2 options. In the first one, test subjects control group. There are 8 entries, starting with number 1, subject details, name Felicia Gordy, age 48, initial weight 162.2 pounds, initial height 5 feet 6 inches, occupation store clerk, residence Huntersville. Number 2, warning, containment breached, subject unaccounted for. So this one escaped before the bombs or after. Containment Unit 3, empty. 4, Thomas McDevitt, age 31, initial weight 172.6 pounds, initial height 5'11", occupation farmer, residence Huntersville. Thomas McDevitt? We read about Thomas in Gail Meyer's terminal at Huntersville, which I covered in my video on Huntersville that you can watch here. She told us that when the people of Huntersville started getting sick, Thomas McDevitt traveled here to West Tek to seek help from one of the doctors here. The doctors showed up at Huntersville, but Thomas never came back. And now we know why. He was kidnapped by West Tek and became just another one of their experiments in the research wing. Number 5, Sheila Dauber, 21, 124.3 pounds, 5'4", occupation waitress, residence Huntersville. 6, Enrique Salvatore, age 43, 234.8 pounds, height 5'10", occupation accountant, residence Huntersville. They used Huntersville as their own personal specimen tank. Number 7, Charles Finley, age 51, weight 198.9 pounds, height 6'1", occupation nothing, residence Huntersville. And finally, Unit 8, empty. There's no mention of the baby we know they kidnapped from Huntersville. Whatever happened to the baby? Could the baby have escaped? The final option is containment release. System offline. Automatic containment release disabled for all connected containment units. We find some Addictol in this room, and that's it. Before we go upstairs, let's continue exploring this bottom floor. Moving south down the hallway, we can turn left into the next room. This is the research and testing lab, but here we also find cells. These must be at least some of the containment cells we read about in the last terminal. Each cell is tiny, with a sink and a bed. In one, we find a machete, but I suppose this doesn't mean anything. It could have been added after the war. In the next one, we find blood bags, clearly added after the war. And the third one, we find more blood bags and gore all over. Moving out of the holding cells, we find 2 more chemistry stations in the research and testing lab, and a first aid kit. This room then opens back out into the main room through a doorway to the north. We see a ramp going up to the second floor, but again, we'll first finish exploring this bottom floor. Moving west and turning south, we find a hole in the wall. And here we find a mutant we missed. This was the Advanced Mutations lab, and after killing the mutant, we can access the nearby terminal. And our miscellaneous quest has this terminal tagged. Advanced Mutations Lab. Introductory statement about the new Advanced Mutations program to be determined. We find 3 options. In the first Advanced Mutations program, goal: push FEV to its practical limits. The Super Mutant program has shown great promise. By tweaking the genomes, we are able to cultivate different strains of the virus, which produce varying results. Note, most strains produce highly unstable results. Few are viable. Only genetic technicians above clearance level 5 are allowed access to the FEV recombiner, given prior approval by Dr. Elias Khan. Morals be damned, ethics out the window. They just want to push FEV to its limits. In the next one, test subject reports. Special report, containment breach. Holotape recording generated. Test subject AM52 has breached containment. Tracking program initiated. Tracking unit signal weak. Current whereabouts, and it gives us longitude and latitude coordinates. If we type these into an online map, where do we arrive? The outskirts of Huntersville. Subject extremely dangerous. Kill or recapture on sight. So subject AM52 escaped and headed right for Huntersville, but we find no evidence that this subject was ever recaptured. In the next one, test subject AM48, July 13th, 2077. Subject AM48 is the closest we've come so far to a sustainable form. Despite this substantial breakthrough, AM48 was declared deceased a mere 12 minutes and 43 seconds after being released from the incubation chamber. It seems the current combination strain FEVS 005938 rendered the subject's lungs useless without artificial respiration. Suitable subjects have been difficult to come by, so control experiments will be extremely limited going forward. Several scientists have voiced their displeasure, but this is what we've been handed. In the next one, AM49, April 30th, 2077, one of the genomes in FEVS 006186 produced undesirable and fatal results in subject AM49. All of the subject's organic tissues were eventually replaced with various retinal tissues, rendering it terminal as the majority of its organs ceased to function. Yeah. If all of a person's organic tissue is replaced with only tissue from the retina, I'm sure that would cause problems. Upon further study, it was determined that FEVS 006186 was contaminated. Are we to believe that someone got tissues from their eye into that sample? Could it be that one of the scientists was so scarred by what he or she was forced to do here that the scientist was crying while working and his or her tears contaminated the sample? In the next one, subject AM50, July 12th, 2077, AM50 was treated with FEVS 006309. Subject self-terminated 12 days into the program when its own upper cuspids pierced its medulla oblongata, leading to rapid loss of organ function. So its teeth grew so long that it punctured its brain. This is disappointing. AM50 seem to be developing quite well. We shall have to modify this strain and remove the mutation's proclivity towards rapid new development in succedaneous or permanent teeth. In the next one, subject AM51, September 5th, 2077, we have a near success with subject AM51. While FEVS 006378 has produced what multiple scientists have proclaimed nightmare-inducing results, the subject seems more or less biologically stable. AM51 seemed capable of surviving on its own, but there were indications that it was constantly in traumatic pain, indeed to the point of self-induced terminal harm shortly after being left in isolated confinement after its incubation period. An autopsy revealed a hyperactive nervous system that may have been in a constant developmental stage since FEVS 006378 was administered. So this mutant committed suicide because he was living in so much pain from his mutation, which was causing his nervous system to constantly grow. Nightmare-inducing indeed. In the next one, subject AM52, October 14th, 2077, Phase 2 combination strain FEVS 006443 has finally taken to test subject AM52, and not resulted in a pile of quivering genetic biowaste. AM52 combines traits that resemble a number of different species. The results are disturbing to say the least, but we have learned valuable insights into what these new strains are capable of. Most notable about this subject are the number of ocular organs along the enlarged upper torso, a second set of arms ending in clawed digits, and a large sickle-shaped claw on each inner toe. That a living, stable, functioning subject seems to be sustaining itself normally is a major accomplishment for the program. We will keep subject AM52 in isolated containment for observation until AM53 has finished incubating. If the two are able to cohabitate along with a standard mutated human test subject, we may try reintroducing them to the Huntersville site for further testing. Oh, wait a minute. A number of eyes along the enlarged upper torso, a second set of arms ending with clawed hands, and a large sickle-shaped claw on each inner toe? That's a description of the snallygaster. And wait a minute, this is AM52. AM52 was the one that escaped. In the next one, test subject AM53, October 23rd, 2077, the day the bombs dropped. Based on the success with AM52, we were confident in tweaking a few genomes for FEVS 006458. Unfortunately, the subject grew too large to contain. The containment unit broke, but AM53 was unharmed. Indeed, despite this and its apparent lack of a discernible head, subject AM53 was surviving its metamorphosis, far exceeding our expectations. Since our containment units were insufficient to hold the subject, we have arranged for immediate transport off-site under sedation. Follow-up visits to AM53 will be scheduled for observation and recording. This is a description of none other than the Grafton Monster. But these scientists created and sedated the Grafton Monster on October 23rd, the day the bombs dropped. So West Tek, using FEV, created both the snallygaster and the Grafton Monster. The snallygaster escaped and was tracked to Huntersville before they lost track of it, and the Grafton Monster awoke after the apocalypse to lumber out of West Tek into the wasteland. Okay, so at last we have an explanation for two of the many cryptids in Appalachia. I wonder what we'll find that'll explain the Mothman and the Flatwoods Monster. With that, we complete the miscellaneous quest and get experience and caps for our efforts. But despite this, there is still a bit more lore. Moving east, we see one of the containment cells, and it's huge. Piles of meat in the corners. Could this have been the one that held the Grafton Monster? Out of the room and rounding the corner, we find a chemistry station at the end of the hallway, and that's a dead end for this room. So backing out, we can head back through the hole in the wall and follow this hallway to its end. This brings us to the research admin desk. With big hanging gore bags, behind the admin desk, we find another military skeleton, an ammo crate we can loot, some medics, and some handcuffs. Then, pushing the button to open the big double doors to the west, we see that this brings us out at the staircase that we saw from the lobby when we first entered. So we've done a big loop of the West Tek research facility. We're almost done. To finish, we need to head back to the hallway, and this time, take the staircase up to the second level. On the second level, we find a whole new set of rooms and cells to explore. Turning right, we find what appears to be another holding cell. It's really ruined, connected to the next one through a broken wall. Back out to the hallway, we see that the super mutants had been cooking up a bunch of mongrel meat. Across the hallway from these cells is another ruined cell, and lying on the sink is holotape subject K12F personal recording.
When they took me from Huntersville, I thought I was being taken to a hospital. I've been sick for days, but no one at this place seems to care. This room I'm in looks more like a cell. They keep the door locked at all times. The nurse that visits me is the only other person that I've seen since I've gotten here. And he won't talk to me. He keeps giving me injections, but I don't feel any better. What's happening to me? Why is my skin changing color? Do I have a disease? No one will tell me anything. And honestly, I can't stand this anymore. I just want to get out of this place and go home.
After the bombs, the people held here, injected with FEV, found themselves free of their masters, no longer being experimented upon, and so they all instinctively went back to the only place they remembered, Huntersville. There, the super mutant population grew, as more and more people continued to become infected by the town's water. This entire top floor is a maze of holding cells, many of which are ruined as if very large creatures knocked their way out of them. We find a security station, and inside, the holding cell terminal. In the first one, subject, sick, minor. Our subjects have been exposed to FEV, so they will exhibit symptoms of a flu-like virus. If they are at this stage, there is no cause for alarm. Continue monitoring their condition as normal. Subject, sick, major. If a subject is having a violent seizure or attack, issue a code blue alert and contact the duty supervisor immediately. Do not attempt any type of resuscitation without direct authorization. In the next one, subject, death. If a subject dies, do not issue an alarm. Contact the duty supervisor and they will instruct you on what to do with the body. Remember, when handling organic matter, biocontainment procedures are in full effect. Subject, violent. If a subject becomes violent enough that you fear for their own safety or the safety of one of our personnel, issue a code red alert and await security. Do not attempt to restrain, sedate, or assist any subject in this state. Code red is what the scientist called after Billy Sievers got angry. And finally, holding cell controls. We can open cell doors, close cell doors, or begin emergency lockdown. But if we choose any, we get a warning, multiple faults detected. Please contact a technician for immediate diagnostic and repair. Heading out of the security station, we see that we've opened a door to the east, overlooking the research lab. Continuing with this side first, we can loot a first aid kit in a nearby cell. Here we also find a cap stash by a hole that drops us below, but that's it for the upper cells. So heading back east through the door, we can hop out to the landing to continue exploring this upper lip. We find a room to the east with chemistry stations, which opens up to the west to a locker room with another hazmat suit. Here we find another decontamination arch, which is currently turned on. We can walk through it to remove our rads. Leaving out the door to the north, we arrive on the opposite end of the second floor. There are only 2 more ways to explore. Heading west, we can turn south to go into a room. Here we find a duffel bag beneath a blackboard with scribbles on it. Here we find what appear to be auto docks, but otherwise this room is empty. Peering over the banister, we see the admin desk below, but instead of hopping down there, we can push a button against the wall to open the door that leads to the top of the stairway. We can then take the staircase down to bring us back to the entrance lobby. And with that, we have fully explored the West Tek research facility, read every terminal, and listened to every holotape. So, what did we learn? We learned that the research West Tek was doing here was similar to the research West Tek and the military were doing at the Glow and Mariposa on the West Coast. While researchers on the West Coast were using PvP to cure the new plague and immunize American citizens, the researchers here were using PvP to generate beneficial plant mutations to cure world hunger. But when West Tek and the military weaponized PvP, turning it into FEV and experimenting on prisoners at Mariposa, the scientists here likewise stopped researching PvP, switched to researching FEV, but they didn't have any prisoners, and so they simply infected the townsfolk nearest to them and used the strength of the US military to keep them quarantined. Their goal was to make a stable superhuman army that was malleable and would follow orders. But despite experimenting with FEV enough to change how quickly it could affect people, and despite creating at least 2 of the cryptids we've met in Appalachia, the Snallygaster and the Grafton Monster, the bombs dropped before they achieved their goal. Despite neutralizing FEV in the vats inside the research facility, the West Tek scientists never neutralized the FEV they added to the water source of Huntersville. And so when the bombs dropped, the super mutants inside, former residents of Huntersville, broke free, went back to Huntersville, where they remained, and where the virus continued to infect anyone who drank from the water there. What do you think about everything we just learned? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I publish many videos each and every week here on my channel, so if you don't want to miss my next one, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I have a shirt shop with completely unique designs you can't find anywhere else. My shirts come in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. You can find them on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, stickers, mugs, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with more brand new videos.